everyone. My name is Zandaya Smith, and I'm the branch manager of the Kirkwood Library. I'm so glad to celebrate Drop Everything and Read Day with you and to honor one of our most celebrated authors, Miss Beverly Cleary, on this day. I'll be reading an excerpt from an ebook entitled The Orange World and Other Stories by Karen Russell. This is an adult book with adult short stories. They are very strange and speculative and quirky, which is why I enjoyed reading from this particular title. The story that I'm going to be reading, The Tornado Auction, is a beautifully written story about an old man, a tornado farm, family, and loss. The Tornado Auction. You know, there was never any money in it, even back then. If you were a break even, you were a success. I'd been fully retired for nearly 15 years when I decided on a whim to return to the sale barn. Driving home from the pharmacy, passing the shoals of purple corn, I watched the wheel turning in my hands. The barn's howling interior, with its warrens of wind hoses, was as familiar to me as my home, but I recognized almost no one. How young the faces had become. Just about everybody I've ever wanted to impress, I've now outlived. Baby Southerlies whinnied around, shrieking their inhuman sounds. Violet funnels chased one another beneath the shivering ducts. Crocus blue mists, soft as exhalations, fogged their incubator walls. I felt a growl under my navel as I passed Chute 7, the doorway out of which my own twisters had flown once upon a time. New lunacies greeted me on either side. What a catalog of weathers my peers were now breeding, dreaming up on their ranch lands. Clouds branded pink cauliflower and Lucifer's bridal veil. Clouds almost too bloated with rain to move. I found plenty to admire, despite the grim forecasts I'd been reading all year. Moisture began to clot on my glasses, so I removed them. Some things I swear I see better without correction, tornadoes for one. My eyes often snag on irrelevancies when I'm wearing my glasses. Without them, I can take in more. The panorama, the whole sublime blur. Estelle, I think, hated the sight of my naked face. Jesus, Robert, do you know how scary you look wandering around out there like Mr. Magoo? The national anthem cranked up, and everyone stood. By the old custom, one of the local families had donated a runty funnel set to manifest at the crowd's off-key crescendo. So while we sang, hands on hearts, a howler blew out of Chute 1. Oh my God, I breathed. And I felt the way I always hoped to feel in church. As the twister kicked and spun around the arena floor, the howl rose from its center, throbbing without discrimination into and through each of us. And row by row, we fell helplessly to our knees. The auction is a quarterly event, and until my retirement, I attended every one. You'll read in the papers that ours is a graying community, a defunct way of life. But on auction day, it never feels so. Scattered around the parking lot, more than 100 twitching immature storms dimple the roofs on their trailers, like pipping chicks testing their shells. Their wailing surrounds and fills the barn, harmonizing with the hum of machinery. The viper pit of hoses, the blue convection models stuck to every wall like big square dewdrops, the various modern wet nurses that kept a developing storm alive. Back in the dark ages, all we had to work with was liquid propane and the real wind, my old man liked to remind me. On my way to the sale barn, I'd passed a quintet of freshly weaned storms, all sired by the same cumuliform supercell of Dallard. Beautiful orphans thriving independently. I'd known this line of clouds my whole life, That Dollard stud cell was famous when I was a kid. Its signature thunder went rolling through this very sail barn, and I smiled to hear it once more. Tornado Alley supercell, the fastest winds on earth. You hear those young clouds rumbling, you get the child joy, the child fever. I'll turn 74 this March, and it doesn't matter. That joy regresses you. It's been a bad season for seasons, not just here in Gosper County, but all across the country. After the anthem, we sat while the flag was attacked by the last of the purebred gusts, and the cloud danced itself out. Then I saw the one face I'd been counting on seeing, as surely as flipping over a penny to find mournful Lincoln, the Rev. I don't care what your politics are, the Rev crooned. I think it's time we all admit that the weather is changing. A few boos, though most were nodding, hatbills stabbing at the air like a bunch of dour woodpeckers. Everybody here has been hit by the warming. This year, if you wanted cold, moist air, you had to pipe it in. The dry line days on which we breeders rely did not come. Guilt rose from the bleachers like a rippling stink. Relative to the West Texas cloud seeding corporations, our approach here in southern Nebraska remains pretty Amish. Still, when you're raising weather by artificial means, it's hard to pretend you don't have a hand in the change. I feel less culpable than some because I always stayed small. I didn't mess with the supercells or the silver iodide. I never went for broke with the $10,000 anemometers, the $250,000 accelerators. One twister at a time, I raised almost by hand. And I raised them for demolition. This was the 70s on the ranch lands of Tornado Alley. You can bring down a city block with a rental tornado, and we had contracts. My twisters have felled fire-damaged silos and bankrupt casinos, foundering chicken shacks, and neglected libraries. So long as you properly configured the chute and programmed the expulsion vents, a tornado would roll toward a condemned building as inexorably as a pregnant lady toward Rocky Road ice cream, as Estelle used to joke in her joking days when the girls were still small. Elsewhere, I hear, they rent out beehives to pollinate fruit trees. Nowadays, of course, armies of American litigators have made weather-assisted demolition illegal. I suppose that's progress. Prices for violent storms have bottomed out, and farmers are downsizing, doing dust devils, doing siroccos. Walls of dust raise themselves, sometimes reaching 8,000 feet under the blazing sun, swallowing the glass flares over the oil wells. The jet stream is not cooperating, neither for that matter is the economy. There was a time when a family could support itself with the sale of 1 or 2 tornadoes a year, but those days are long gone. To survive, you have to sell out to the rodeos, the monster truck rallies. We don't suffer alone. Offshore rigs report that waterspouts have all but dried up. Here on the plains, an early frost snuffed every budding funnel cloud. These days, anybody with sense farms winds. Winds are the growth industry, clean energy. You want to get out ahead of the apocalypse? Get into winds. Supercells, those alpha storms that bulge with precipitation like muscle, cost too much in upkeep and insurance for all but the corporate outfits. Culls deemed unfit for sale are left to spin out in the green canyons, thousands of acres of privately held weather graveyards. A few family farms are still trying to develop prestige twisters. I saw 2 in utero while driving into town, sister funnels housed in adjacent incubators. They looked lonely out there spinning on their single toes. Purple monsters, twice the height of the cork-colored barn, yawing up and down, consuming bitter air. What it must be costing to irrigate them all through July to keep those updrafts tight I shudder to imagine. Any storm you see at auction was artificially bred, artificially maintained. The Coriolis Farms, our family's outfit, was no exception. Our tornadoes we advertised as hell in a handbasket, Estelle's copy. Typically rotating around 60 or 70 more miles per hour, rarely more than 50 meters across, EF0, EF1. Compact enough to rage in a corral and strong enough to flip a car. But even corporate raised stock is far less powerful than the act of God twisters that destroy whole towns. I've seen mobile homes conscripted into a cosmic game of kick the can, and that cruelty is assigned randomly by forces unknown. Weather damage is the inverse of a victimless crime. People get robbed of everything, and there is no evildoer to lock in a cage. So we're going to end here and leave a lot more, hopefully, for you to check out. Again, that was an excerpt from the tornado auction, which is in the book Orange World and Other Stories by Karen Russell. I've read the ebook version, but it's also available in hard copy from any of your Fulton County libraries, and it's also available in ebook and audiobook form in our digital collection. There's a lot more to this story. You might be wondering who Estelle is. Who is this old man that's tornado farming? And what is tornado farming? You got a little bit of information there, but there's a lot more to learn. So if you enjoyed this excerpt from Tornado Auction, check out Orange World and Other Stories and several other titles by Karen Russell with your library card. Thank you again for dropping everything and reading with me today. This has been Andea Reeves, branch manager of the Kirkwood Library. I appreciate you. Thank you, and be well.